Hi there, folks. Today we're looking at categorical versus quantitative data. And so the first question here is just to kind of get us thinking about the different variables and individuals we might consider when we're looking at data sets. So let's say that we were moving to a new school district. We want to know, okay, what kind of information, what might we look for? Okay. And so we might look at different things, and you can kind of brainstorm some stuff here. But you might look at something like the school ranking. So you want to know how well the schools in that area perform. Okay, so school ranking. You might also look at something like taxes, like how much does it cost to live in that area, or what does the housing market look like in terms of the cost of homes? Like how much am I going to pay to get a home there? Or if I'm moving really far away, along those same lines, might look at the job market in that area. You know what I mean? Like what types of jobs are available? Am I going to be able to make a viable career in that area? You might also look at things like crime rates. Okay, you want to make sure the area that you're moving to is safe, especially if you have kids, stuff like that. And along with school ranking, you might look at test scores, things like that. So these are all different things you might look at, and these are different kind of variables we might look at. All right. So when we talk about any time we're making decisions, we can use statistics to do that, and that's what we're doing when we're looking at school rankings. We're looking at taxes. We're looking at job rates in the area, for things that are available, crime rates, that kind of thing. We're looking at statistics, and we're using that to make our decision. So a couple definitions here. When we talk about individuals are the objects described in a data set. It's essentially what we are studying. These can be people, animals, things, all right? And so in the example we just talked about, the school district itself would be the individual that we're studying. Okay. So when we look at the things we just talked about, we might look at a couple different school districts. If we're looking at this area, we might look at York Suburban as one of the individuals that we're going to look at crime rates for, and taxes and school ranking. We might look at Dallastown as another. We might look at Central as another. Okay. And so those are the individuals we're studying, would be the actual schools there. Okay. So the individuals are what we're studying, or who we're studying, and the variables are what we're going to collect data about that thing. Okay, so any characteristics of the individual. So the school ranking would be a variable that we're going to collect data about. The taxes would be a variable we're going to collect data about. The housing market, whether it's poor or fair or good, that would be something we're going to collect data about. All right. So the individual is what we're studying. We're studying the school district. The variables are what we're studying about that school district. Okay. And so when we talk about variables can be categorized. They can be classified as categorical or quantitative data. All right. And so, like, again, going back to the example we are just talking about, something like test scores for a school would be a quantitative data, because we're looking at actual values that we could calculate statistics over. We could calculate the average and that kind of thing. But like if we were looking at school rankings in terms of if it's ranked as like excellent, good, poor, or fair, that would be a categorical type of ranking. That would be categorical data. All right. And so when we look at these variables, we can look at them in kind of a fine-tooth comb and determine, are they categorical or quantitative. Categorical is essentially when we're assigning labels. Okay. Excellent, fair, good. That is a label. Yes, it gives us some idea about the characteristics of this thing, but it's still a label that helps us describe the thing. It doesn't give us actual values that we can calculate statistics or averages, things like that. Okay. Quantitative is numerical values, but very important here, numerical values that we can actually calculate things with. All right. So they have to have a meaningful average. Okay. When we calculate those values, they have to have a meaningful average. All right. And that's important because there are some numbers for data that wouldn't really be quantitative data. They would still be categorical data. They would be like labels. All right. One of the classic examples is when I use, if you watch sports, sports players have numbers on their jersey. If I were to calculate the average of jersey numbers, that average wouldn't mean anything. It wouldn't describe anything real or anything meaningful. Those numbers are just a way of identifying the player. We know that, this player is number 10. All right. And so that idea is that those numbers are being used as categorical data. All right. So, yes, quantitative data is numbers, but they have to be meaningful numbers, something that we can calculate averages from. Okay. And that's the place where students usually have just a little bit of trouble here. For example, if I look at these ones, I want to classify each. So the first thing is here is height. And so when you think about something like height, I want to know, is height, yes, those are numbers. Would those numbers give me uh, averages that would mean something? Like if I calculated the average height of the class, would that give me meaningful data? And the answer is yes. It would give us an idea of what an 11th and 12th grade class of students about how tall they are. Okay. And so, yes, this one is going to be quantitative data because, and I'm just going to label it with a Q here, because it gives us numbers that we can calculate meaningful values from. All right. If we look at something like hair color, can I calculate the average hair color in the class? The answer is no. I can't calculate an average with hair color. That is just describing someone based on a category that they would fall into. You would fall into the category of, blonde, or the category of brown hair. Okay. So something like that is categorical. I'm going to label that with a C. All right. I can't calculate a meaningful average. And then something like zip code. Zip code, if I were to look at the average zip code in a class of students, well, almost everyone's going to have the same zip code. That doesn't really mean anything. A zip code just tells us what area you live in. All right. And so it's a way of labeling where you are from. So this would be numbers that actually represent categorical data. Okay. Those are numbers, yes, but they're numbers that are being used as a label. The calculations with those numbers wouldn't be meaningful. Okay. So then something like a percent score, if I did a percent score for like a test or something like that, would that be categorical or quantitative? And so if I looked at the test scores of everyone in the class and I found the average, well, that's a meaningful number because it gives me an idea of how the class did overall. So a percent score would be a quantitative data. All right. And it's because the average has meaning. Okay. And again, that's when I'm talking about this thing as a percent, okay? We're talking about a percent score right now, all right? The follow-up question here is, how would I kind of convert this thing to a categorical piece of data, all right? And the answer is we have to think about, well, how can I express scores in terms of a label rather than a meaningful number? And the obvious answer here, if you're already thinking about it, is letter grades, okay? If I converted this to a letter grade still gives me similar information, but it's categorical in nature because it labels you as either having an A, a B, or C, or a D. I can't calculate the average if I only have letter grades. I can't say, oh, the average is a B when I have, 4 A's, 4 B's, and 4 C's. It doesn't work that way. I can only calculate averages with numbers. The average might be an actual B when I calculate it from the percent scores, but when I do letter grades now, it's categorical data. I'm labeling the grades rather than calculating the grades. And so something like this, in the following table, I want to know, I've got a bunch of roller coasters here, and I've got different things listed about the roller coasters. And really, we're going to identify things like, what are the individuals? What are the variables? Okay. And then are those variables categorical, or are they quantitative? That kind of thing. All right. And so for this one, the individuals in this particular data set, the things that we are studying are the roller coasters. So generically, it's the roller coasters. So the individuals would be like the wild mouse, the Terminator, the Manta, the Prowler, and the Diamondback. Okay, those are the individuals being studied. Just like when I was looking at that first example, we kind of thought about, we're talking about the different school districts would be the individuals. So the individuals are what we are studying. We are studying roller coasters. And now I want to know, like, what data am I collecting about those roller coasters? Those would be the variables. So the variables for this particular one Well, we're collecting data about the type of roller coaster, the height of the roller coaster, the design, the speed, and the duration. Okay. So those would be our variables because that's what we're collecting data about these individuals. Okay. So this would be the type, the height. These are all the things we're collecting data about. The design, the speed, and the duration. And then classifying each of these as categorical versus quantitative. Well, the type is either steel or wood. Well, that is a label that we place on this thing. So that would be a categorical type of data. The height, those are significant actual values that we could calculate averages from. So that would be quantitative data. The design is either sit down or flying. And so, again, that is a label, that is a category that it would fall into. So that's categorical. The speed is numbers that, again, calculating the average would be meaningful. So that's quantitative. And then the duration, how long it takes. Again, those are numbers in seconds. And that would also be quantitative because the average would mean something. Okay. And so these are the types of variables we have, and those are whether they're categorical or quantitative. And then it said, describe the individual in the highlighted row. If I scroll back up here, if I'm describing the individual in the highlighted row here, I would just kind of go through. It's like a summary of this individual. So I might say something like the prowler. And a lot of times it helps when you're putting this in sentence format is you kind of group the categorical data together and the quantitative data together. So I might say the prowler is a wooden sit-down coaster. See, that's all the categorical stuff. So it's those descriptors, those labels. And then I would talk about the quantitative data. I would say that reaches a height of 102.3 feet, a speed of 51.2 miles per hour, and it lasts 150 seconds. Okay. So again, it's just a nice summary of that individual. And again, I organize it in a sentence. A lot of times it's easy to organize a sentence when you kind of group the categorical and the quantitative data together. The prowler is a wooden sit-down coaster. There's the categorical that reaches a height of 102, speed of 51, and lasts 150 seconds, all the quantitative data together. Okay. Then this last thing here, we're preparing a study for television viewing habits of high school students. And the question is, what kind of variables would we want to look at? And let's do at least 2 categorical and 2 quantitative data types here, 2 categorical and 2 quantitative. So do the categorical and the quantitative variables here. Okay. And so you think about categorical, you might try to figure out like, I don't know, what kind of genres do the students like? Like, do they prefer action, comedy, that kind of stuff? Or maybe the rating of it. Like, is it rated PG-13? Is it rated G? Is it rated R? Okay. What kind of things are they into from that perspective? Although this is TV, so it would be like TV-14 and TV-AMA, I guess. And so then quantitative data, you might ask things like the amount of time that they spend watching those shows. So time spent. Or you might look at like the duration of the shows themselves. Okay. Maybe some shows, some shows are only like 30 minutes long. And some shows are more like an hour long. And maybe students prefer those shorter shows that they can get into when they have time, or maybe they prefer to be involved in something that takes a little bit longer. Okay. So that would be quantitative data as well. All right. So again, looking at those differences, individuals are what we are studying. The variables are what we are studying about those individuals. And then we can classify that as categorical, which is like those labels, or quantitative, those meaningful numbers. Okay.